Welcome to the Way of the Empath. In this segment, I'm going to speak about animal communication. I find myself meandering a lot, so I guess I'm new at this and I need healthy boundaries. So welcome to the Way of the Empath. I'm not sure if this even recorded me because I had the ear pod not in my ear. So I was saying that this video is going to be about animal communication and the empath, which is that we naturally are animal communicators because we're animals and aware of our animal body. Now, this is something that is very difficult for people. Okay. People are the only animal that think that we're not an animal. We're the only animal that tries to control each other, like massively. Especially those of us who are free tend to get more controlled, or people tend to try to control us the most. And the people that try to control us the most are people who don't have any self-control or very little. So they feel big by trying to control us. That is by definition also it's a psychological definition of an abuser, is to seek to control someone else. And that's something abusers don't want you to control them. That's the first thing they like to do, is they like to say, don't control me. But they're actually actively controlling you. But they're controlled by their own fears and their ego. So that's important to just note that. Now, animal communication is the universal language of love. It is universal love. It's based in and rooted in universal love. So it's required to be able to listen. It's very difficult for many people. They just don't listen. They're too busy projecting what they want to say. And even if you listened to them all day, they would not get it. They wouldn't listen to you. I know this as a therapist, okay? But as an empath myself, I learned animal communication over about a 20-year period with my dog. Now, I already had known a bit of it from when I was very young. I grew up in, my earliest years were in teepees and living the Native American life. My parents, even though they were both from middle and upper middle class families, on middle class for my mother and upper middle class for my father, they still embraced Native American ways for a period of time. And then we also then built a commune, ashram type lifestyle with other families that realized that we needed to come together in order to live together that way. So we had wiki-ups, teepees, these things called earth lodges, and tried to live the Native American way. And did peyote ceremonies, and I mean, there were a lot of amazing magical things about that time in my life. And at the same time, it was also there were some things that they messed up on, and it really broke the whole place up. And as an empath, I was blamed for everything. I mean, I'm talking about 3, 4, 5-year-old child that I was, and giant adults pointing the finger at me, saying I was the cause of all of their problems. Now, I think that children sometimes do feel that anyway, even if they're not being, targeted or called out and outcasted and put, like I was, an outcast and a scapegoat, and kind of like isolated into this place and marginalized. But that even happened at the in these ashram, commune, hippie, Native American life place that I lived on. But I knew animal communication because I was very in touch with my body. So all along in my life, I've been very in touch with my body. I was a dancer. I began dancing at the youngest age. And it was the way that I healed myself. So even when people were mean to me, because they were mean to me like a lot all my life, I've been the subject of the worst abuse that you can imagine. And that's what an empath is. I mean, in a world of haters and very ill, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually ill people. And that's just something that we have to accept because it's real. The empath, at a young age, I was beaten physically beaten very, very badly in many different ways, emotionally, mentally abused, verbally abused, sexually abused in a certain way. It didn't become something where I allowed it to be, penetrating me or anything, but it was sexual abuse, psychosexual mostly. But during that time, like, I didn't know as a child how to deal with it really. Like, I would pray and I would dance, and I would pray, and I was I was brought in by these ascended masters who took care of me. By age 8, I was leaving my body at night because I was in so much pain being in this human body that had been abused so much. And then by early 20s, I was crying literally oceans of tears for years to heal from all the abuse I'd suffered from. And it wasn't until my early 20s that I was able to, separate myself out and be given the financial, because the financial really helped me. The financial aid, you could say, the support, the windfall of finances that allowed me to, well, one, to step away from the abusers and the abusive environment that I brought up in. And two, so I needed to separate from them in order to heal. And two, to develop, after healing my own body, to have such an impenetrable, not impenetrable the way you think, but I had the ability to let go very easily of things. Like when someone did something to me or said something nasty, I would just release. I'm in this place in my life right now where, as a healer, we are dealing with the most intimate and dark things within people. Okay. And as a healer with a lot of Scorpio placements, lots and lots and lots, and all conjunct, all in Scorpio, in a house ruled by Scorpio, in the 11th house, the house of the sun, the house of the star, the confluence of allies. Because of the fact that my energy brings to the surface things that need to be healed, people will automatically strike out at me in whatever way that in that moment when they get triggered by my energy, that they feel it's okay to, especially around the new moon, which we're at right now. We're coming into the new moon on the 8th, and today is the 2nd, I believe. Yes. Even the tarot card, the moon, is very misunderstood, but it is like the empath, and it is the high priestess, in that sense that the sun is the magician, and the sun, and the second, so the first card in tarot, the magician, the second card in tarot is the high priestess, the two main elemental energies, the masculine, the feminine. And my destiny number is 11 as well, which is a master number, the master communicator, the master messenger. So a lot of what I'm putting out is meant for people to hear. It's not meant, I mean, if it raises me up in some way and helps me in some way, great. But I have to say these things anyway, because that's what I'm meant to do. So hopefully these messages reach the right ears, and those who are willing to hear. The saying in the Bible, those who have eyes to see and ears to hear will see and hear them, right? Animal communication is universal love language that all animals communicate through, except humans. Humans have a very distorted and fragmented idea and experience of love because of their bodies. Their bodies being blocked so that their spirit doesn't reside in the body very much. And when people die, it's because the spirit doesn't reside in the body like at all, eventually, right? We push the spirit out with bad behavior. Like that's why it's the saying is the wages for sin or death, is because every time we do something to deny the body what it needs, it separates and creates a rift between the spirit and the body, spirit and matter. It's based on how we treat matter. This is why Jesus said the way to the Father is by first honoring the mother, which is the earth, which is the body. It's the way that we treat the earth and the body, the earth and body, that determines whether we make it to the Father. It reminds me of it's a true story of Yogi Bhajan, a famous Kundalini teacher, who lived a pretty amazing life. You know, he brought Kundalini yoga to the West. He was quite the maestro, quite the stud, attractive man. He had womanized a lot of women in his lifetime and during that time. He was in the West and, you know, he was spreading his seed, but he was also married. When he ended up almost dying of, I believe it was kidney cancer, kidney or bladder, I think it was kidney. He ended up going to the gates of heaven. This is his story, his words, not mine. And at the gates of heaven, they were all women. And they said, "How did you treat women?" And then they reviewed with his soul what he had been doing. And when he saw how horrible he had been to women, he was asked a series of questions while they reviewed it. And then he got down on his knees, on his body of light knees, and begged to not have to go to hell, because they were going to send him to hell. They were not going to allow him into heaven because of how he had treated women. And he got down on his knees and he begged to be given the opportunity to not die, to come back into his body, so that he would be given the opportunity for him to change his ways. And they granted him. So he came back into body, he didn't die, and he wrote many, many books about how powerful and amazing women are, which in turn gave him a happy death. We assume he made it to heaven, but no one really truly knows. As a high priestess, he was welcomed in, but he still had a lot of work to do before he was brought fully in. He was like in the gate, and that was it. The outskirts of heaven, you could say. So how does that relate to animal communication? It relates so much because it's the feminine energy of receptivity, this divine love that you can see in women. Women have a stronger connection to animals. Men are always trying to outdo women. Every time you see a woman, you know, like the lady who like swims with the sharks and they're all her buddies. And then you got a guy going, "Look at my lions." Or a guy saying, "Look at my sharks." But men just don't have that energy the way women do. And we know for a fact that women always vibrate with more light than men. That has created a chasm at lower levels of the masculine who terrorizes the female, because he will never be as light as her, and he will always try to bring her down until he gets the hell out of her life. And I'm speaking to someone specifically right now who I had to go to court for the second time for this restraining order, who's denying his abuse and his hatred towards women. And these lower level masculine, they do unconscionable things to women. As a high priestess, see, I've been judging him. He hasn't been allowed to be around me. He's done everything on the outskirts trying to do horrible things to me. He thinks that somehow he's brought me down to somewhat of a level where we're on the same page. No, it's all a game that God is showing, and then God will tear me away from him, and he'll never have access to me again. He'll be seeing me on high, and he'll see that he would never reach the citadel of where I sit. That's a fact. It's happened with every man. But God lets them think and feed their ego and think they're so special. That is someone who will probably never be able to have animal communication in his lifetime. And that's sad for the world. As a compassionate individual, as an empath, that's a sad reality that someone would be allowed to be in this world that would do those things. It's a very, very sad world to have people like that in it. Because that will mean that it will be more dangerous and less safe because they're in it. So animal communication is through sound. There are certain sounds that each animal makes. And actually each animal, because there's sounds like all birds make a certain sound, certain types of birds, they all make a certain sound. But then within those birds, there are certain birds that will make different sounds. Like if you had a flock of chickens, they'll all make certain sounds, the 26 or so little sounds that you know what they mean, like the trill, you know, or the, which is kind of like a purr, or the something like that, or this sound that I still can't make. I haven't really worked on these sounds. I'm not one of those. I should, but I don't usually have time for that. I'm doing other things. There's certain shamans that do that. There's the it sounds like that, but a chicken, which is the hawk sound. Like, oh, watch out, there's a hawk. There's the sound, there's the egg song, and there's a full song with that. Like, I just laid an egg, look. There's the bok bok, which is kind of like a hello. There are so many, and that's just between chickens. So there's the sound. Then there is, and the sound doesn't come first, okay? The image and the feeling. The feeling comes first. So there's the feeling accompanied by imagery, accompanied by sound. And then there's this body language. It's like that sequence. Sometimes it's very varied on which one comes first, depending on what your receptivity is. If you're very much in like a hidden, like a very natural place like I am right now, where there's like no one, there isn't a lot of psychic waves, you can pick up what they're saying more easily. And if you're isolated with just that chicken, for example, that dog, for example, that cat, that bobcat, that ferret, whatever it is, okay, that snake. But so there's that easiness of being able to see that, okay? Like, so I'll give an example because why chickens is because earlier tonight I was talking to a chicken and I conveyed what it was to her mama. And I said, well, first I called her lady, and then she decided to call her lady. And I thought, oh, that's lovely. She was such a lady. She's such a lady. She was prancing like a lady, and I saw her beauty, and I'm like, oh, who are you? And I said, hold on, I'll get you a treat, get you a little gift. I went back to my car. I found her cabbage. Cabbage is also really good around this time of the moon cycle and very good for the tummy. And so she really loved the treat. I brought it in and I held it near her, and she asked me to hold it for her. First I held it and I said to her, and she knew, even though I was speaking in English, not her language, because I had the feeling connection with her, she heard through the sound, not the words, the sound, what I was saying. Because in the sound, there was images of my birds in the back of the car saying, Mama, let's go. It's going to be night, because birds, all birds are sun birds. Okay, early morning, sun. As soon as it starts to get dark, they're perching. So they needed me to get them out and have an outdoor before that. So time was not on my side. And I said to Lady, I'm like, well, they need to go too. But Lady's like, share with me. And I said, okay, I will. And I held it for her, and she loved it. She loved it. And then when I said, oh, let's put it in the chicken ball, this little ball thing that I don't really like them because it's hard for the chicken to really peck it, but it's cute. And I said, no, let's find another place for it. When I really knew I had to go, because my birds were really like, we need the attention. They're like my little babies. So I said, I brought it over to this other little area. I found a little spot that would hold it really well so that she could peck at it. And I showed her, and she looked over at me because she knew. See, when animals know that you know that they know, and there's this communication, they start talking, like a lot. They start telling you what's up. She had walked over to this other area. She sort of looked back at me. She saw what I was doing. I told her, this is what I'm going to do. Leave it there for you. She came over. She had a little bite just to be kind, to let me know that she accepted it. A couple little pecks. And then she went into perch for the evening. And I went back in and talked to her chicken mama, and I explained to her what I mean by animal communication. Because, oh, I missed a part. So when I was pulling away and saying, okay, I can't let you, I need to go to my birds, let me find a place, she made, I call it the chicken whine. Oh. But chicken sound like that. Like, ah, ah. She did it several times, like, no, you feed me. It's very cute. Attitude. But I mean, I understood the situation. She had been lonely. She didn't have any chickens around her. She had lost one of her chicken friends who died recently. And, you know, as an animal communicator, you get all that. You pick all that up just from the feeling level. An empath is someone who feels deeply, has this open feeling. And that open feeling is very precious. It allows us to also understand human animals, because see, human animals, now the problem with human animals is, yes, you can read them, but they also are so mentally and emotionally wounded, especially emotionally, because the mental is just really the reflection of the emotional, just like the back is a reflection of the front of the body. That even though I see there's so many layers of wounding, that even if I were to go directly to the inner core self, it would be too much sometimes, because there are too many layers to reach in. So for example, you know, when with the birds, it's so easy because they're already really in touch with themselves. But with like a human animal, it'd be like, oh, okay, so I can see that you're going to be triggered by this. You're going to hate me. You're going to feel the love and feel it as hate because you have so much wounding. You're going to see it as an attack because my energy triggers you. You're going to look at me and say, oh my gosh, she's gorgeous, like I hate her, even if you're a man, or I want to go have sex with her, whatever it is. These things come up. With a human animal, there's so much complexity that it's difficult to get them to really communicate properly. So there's a lot of layers. Just like if Jesus had to get rid of people's drug addiction just to reach them, like reach past the fact that they're on drugs, that's really tough. There's like a whole nother layer that's a really bad layer. And the fact that that isn't even being addressed in society at the level it needs to is scary. It's scary for the world. It's scary for innocent beings. It's scary for all victims, children, women, some men, but for sure for all of the non-human animals. They're all going to suffer for that kind of abuse that comes out of people like that. So I'm trying not to end at a negative note here, because the positive thing is that anyone can heal. Anyone can heal at any time. Anyone can heal at any time. Anyone can heal at any time. It's not easy to heal for some, but it's better than staying wounded and deepening your chasm between your body and your soul. It's better than hurting others and destroying your life ultimately by what you've done to others. Because ultimately you're doing all that to yourself. And you're usually doing it to yourself while you're abusing others, because there's a deep level where everyone has a conscience. The conscience is like the spark of light. Yes, some have more conscience than others. We know this. The psychopath has a very small conscience, if not at all, anything at all. Maybe the tiniest spark, you can't even see it. But there's conscience, and the conscience is like, oh, that was wrong. And then one proceeds to punish oneself by doing something like, oh, this feels really bad. Let me stuff myself with some food. Now, if they ate raw vegan, they wouldn't be able to do much about it. It would maybe give them some nourishment and give them some more love. But if they eat like most people who trash their body with the food they eat to block their emotions, what's going to end up happening is it's going to be really bad. It's going to make it worse. And that's what people do. They abuse themselves emotionally, and then they proceed to abuse others emotionally. The empath doesn't do any of that. I want to differentiate that. The empath doesn't do any of that. The ability to process and let go of emotions, release them, even integrate the lessons of certain experiences, because there's always emotions within those experiences, is the greatest thing that we can do in order to live a healthy, happy life. And what would be the point not to? I ask you all. So thank you so much. So I am going to send this out as Empath and Animal Communication. What would be the other name I should call to make it interesting for people on YouTube? The Empath, Animal Communication, and the Ascended Masters. There we go. All right. Thank you all for listening. May you be well. May you work towards enlightenment, towards becoming an empath each and every day. If you fall off the horse, get back into that plant-based, vegan, ethical for animal diet, lifestyle, because it's a lifestyle, not just a diet. And like, share, subscribe. Much love, and be blessed.